on the scene. It's time to get mean. I'm a lean revolution machine. For what people stay, they sway. For today is good as any day. Y'all feel slightly this, let's resist. Raise your fist and pump like this. Promises over the top. Don't cross the line, but you know it's right. Who you are, roll with. Who you are, roll with. Let's see. Let's roll. Who you are, roll with. Who you are, roll with. Let's see. Let's roll.
Chris Goldstein, welcome.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm here with Big Bear, and I put my public comment in this morning.
Yes.
And, I want other people to realize that today's the deadline for a public comment. That's what we're here for today, right?
Today is the deadline. Happy DEA Day. That's what we're going to call July 22nd, 2024, the 17th rescheduling request to the DEA in the CSA's history. But today is the close of the public comment period. And this is interesting because this is sort of a very well-timed culmination of what has been a 2-year process right now. You know, I got a presidential pardon on the same day that this scheduling review was started in 2022. It was October 6, 2022. And it was kind of a surprise announcement by the White House. And they came out and they announced like a lot. It was this big, huge, massive thing in 2022. White House announces a scheduling review for marijuana and a mass pardon for the lowest level of marijuana offenses, including stuff like mine. So, and we all knew that there was going to be like a timing thing with that, but now we're here. Today's the day. It's the Health and Human Services Department made their recommendation, and that was earlier this year. It was really almost back in January that the letter leaked, and HHS was able to start teasing out that they were going to go towards a rescheduling move. And then just a few months ago, the final move by the Department of Justice, this is the United States Attorney General Merrick Garland, they issued what is called a rescheduling regulation. And all of this actually, if you want to get super nerdy about, goes through the Attorney General's office and the Department of Justice. But here we are. The DEA is considering a scheduling review. Yeah, I just went on talking while you were walking around the studio. It's cool. I hope you could hear me. So, you know.
I did.
But here we are. After President Biden and the White House, the Biden-Harris administration issues this in 2022. The Department of Health and Human Services has their documents come out that say, you know, we should go to something other than Schedule 1. And what's interesting is that if you we got the best insight into this whole thing during this process that we ever have in the past. And I want to post some links here. So I don't want to get, you got to give me a minute we're going to warm up here because you sent me the links that I want to send out to people so that they can tune in. So I want to do that real quick while we do some housekeeping. And don't we like both need to roll joints right now? I need to submit my comment while we're on the air this morning. That's going to be the fun part. So give me just a minute.
I'd like to read some of the comments. Let me share the screen here.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, share the screen.
There's some comments here that you got to check out. They're pretty crazy. Share screen. I believe it's this one. Okay, here we go. Can you see this?
Yeah. Okay, give me just a minute.
This rule is a horrible idea. This should remain in Schedule 1. Marijuana is a gateway drug and ruins lives. That's the first comment I got here.
Wow.
Hurtful. Second
That's
comment.
rough. Hold on. I'm getting I knew you could probably still see me and hear me, but I have a frozen screen. So give me just a minute and I'll try and fix this.
Finally, some good legislation. It's time to stop treating using a plant with many medicinal uses as a criminal action. This is good for the USA. USA, USA, US.
Oh, wow. You sound like a rally now. Be careful.
Public comment number 3. Oh, this might be your no. Wow, what's this? Comments. Not knowing the design, but just vagaries cause an inability to make helpful statements. There is a major possibility that the design might damage the entire process that people have vested their entire savings and livelihood in and will succumb to large pharma. Small businesses will succumb and leave behind the people who were given a chance to elevate themselves and, for most part, have invested every last penny into this burgeoning industry.
Wow.
Currently,
I'll be right back.
Currently, recreational markets exist in certain states, and they are being damaged by the MSOs. The large scale and magnitude of what medical is allowed to do is eliminating any business growth in the arena and entities that need it most. There has been no satisfactory notice on how to regulate this product that has survived prohibition. The same models of control as pharmacies currently operate under cannot translate to the small farmer grower. The entire control of the substance is being deregulated by pharma and now uniquely falls on the consumer to establish the rules if none are presented to the public to comment on. We have seen legitimate growers deregulated and inattention to growing conditions and toxic outcomes of heavy metals, molds, and other solvents that can harm the public. There are no solid safety parameters that equate to alcohol use and protections, so commenting is impossible. This is not a substance that can self-regulate and keep the public safe. At which age will youth be able to access cannabis? What are the parameters which have proven some of the great outcomes in specific arenas, such as seizure control in youth? As growers, we see a liability risk that we don't want to invite. There are no parameters about the medicinal sales structure that enabled commenting. What are the safeguards? As growers, we don't want to see a model that cannot serve the entire population. How does pharma interface with insurance? This is a very strange comment. It's a bunch of different comments, it seems. Let's see, submitter info. It says Yevez Mikol. I don't know what that is. It's like a bunch of comments. It could be AI. I don't know what that is. Let's go to another one. These are good. I just don't know what that one is. All right, comment number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rescheduling of marijuana to a Schedule 3 is both too little and too late if its intent is genuinely to reform cannabis access and culture. Thousands of Americans are still incarcerated for possession and use of a harmless plant on which our government has owned the patent for decades. This rescheduling does not do enough to rectify the unjust limitations put on the freedoms of the American to ingest what they please, how they please. Autonomy is not up for vote. The government acknowledged the benefits of cannabis when it shelled out taxpayer dollars for the patent. Now it needs to show its cards and deschedule completely. Classifying cannabis as a Schedule 3 substance still hamstrings research into its potential uses and benefits due to product sourcing limitations, which the government does have control over and makes money from. While this move might look good to some hoping to improve their political standings or appear helpful to those skimming the surface of events or reasons to justify their political leanings, this decision does not do enough to benefit the American people who are in need of the healing cannabis others freely and on which the government is blatantly monopolizing. Without the inclusion of further licensing, enabling laboratories to acquire research materials where they are available instead of wading through red tape and waiting endlessly for approved sources to become available, the forward momentum given to cannabis research will be minimum. The research that has already been conducted under such authoritarian conditions as the cannabis industry has suffered has been more than sufficient to prove the benefits of cannabis in all its forms, outweighing the use of any potential misuse by irresponsible people, which is an ever-present risk factor in all things. The majority of Americans are now aware of the truth about cannabis and therefore are aware that the government has been withholding beneficial information from them. They will not wait to exercise their inherent and inalienable rights. The descheduling that is so very overdue would simply be a formality, allowing all cannabis companies to push forward with new research, products, ideas, and solutions, all of which would boost the woefully flagging America economy while enabling freer access to the safe and effective remedy by the public. Very well written there. I like that one. So if you didn't put your public comment in, you have another hour and a half to get your comment in. Noon today is the deadline. So put your comment in. Now do it on AI. It's friggin' 3-click activism. You go on AI, have them make a comment for you, throw it out there, put it up there. They got about 30,000. They need more. Housing is a human right, but too many people are denied access to this fundamental need because of their criminal record. I urge the DEA to remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, a move that would mark a step forward rectifying the harms caused by its criminalization. By descheduling cannabis, the federal government would be following the lead of 31 states that have already decriminalized the drug. In fact, the majority of people in the U.S., 70%, according to a November 23 Gallup poll, support cannabis legalization. But rescheduling cannabis from Schedule 3 to Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, as the Department of Health and the DEA proposed, is insufficient. If cannabis remains on the CSA, people can continue to face penalties at the federal level for possession, including arrest and incarceration, which leads to a lifetime of consequences that can impact someone's ability to secure employment, housing, benefits, educational opportunities, and more. The criminalization of cannabis, a legacy of the war on drugs, was a policy decision rooted in racism. In the decades since, its enforcement has been disproportionately targeted at Black people and other people of color. It's time to abandon this draconian approach. I support descheduling cannabis from the CSA, a step towards righting the wrongs of its criminalization. So, yeah, if you can go on this page, you'll definitely get the comments. You can put your comments in there. Definitely something you want to do. If you're watching this, I would definitely, Wayne, I see you out there. Christo, Amish Nitro, Luxury Exotics, Canacure. Get your comments in. If you haven't put your comments in, put them in. Get them in there. It's important stuff. You can make a difference. A couple of clicks on a computer. Paco. So these are the public comments here. We're going to go to the next one. And this one here. Hello. My name is Harry. I'm an 18-year-old medical cannabis patient in the state of Illinois. About 3 years ago, I was involved in an accident on my bike and I broke my arm. What I didn't know is that I ended up hurting my back. As the months went on, my arm began to heal. I did not opt to take any pain meds or physical therapy. Over time, the underlying back pain began to be more noticeable taking the cast off. Since that day at the hospital, I have been using this very plant to get me through each day. Whether it be to get up out of bed in the morning and be able to take a shower without pain, to be able to stretch freely without pain, to be able to go to bed without pain. The compounds that this plant, call it cannabis or hemp, it's the same thing. The compounds that this plant produces saved my life. It allowed me to get through the toughest years of my life without the use of pharmaceuticals. What I don't understand as an 18-year-old patient who looks at this plant like medicine, but like any other plant, is why it's so victimized in today's society. I grew up watching this plant be treated like heroin, to now where it's looked at as safer than alcohol. But yet the government still looks at it like a pharmaceutical. As a lawmaker, have you ever been put under ketamine as a 15-year-old teenager in the hospital? Do you even realize that cannabis under Schedule 3 would not only put power in corporate and pharma hands, but it makes the plant seem like ketamine, seem like steroids, like synthetic testosterone? Are you kidding me? Is this a joke? This plant saved my life in ways these compounds would never. I beg you and ask you dearly to treat this plant like a plant. Every single person should have the right to grow as many plants as they seem fit. I say it again. If it wasn't for this plant, I would not be here writing this. I owe it to this plant to fight for the rest of my life, for it to be treated humanely. Thank you. I hope you receive this message with as much inspiration that is inside of me. Please do the right thing for this country. Thank you. Wow. These comments are pretty good. Chris, did you hear that one? That was a good one.
That was good. I think that your reading is excellent too. I'm hiring you to read the Constitution on the 4th of July next year. I think that you should be the reader of that for sure.
Oh, after my my 20-minute national anthem, sure.
You did a 20-minute national anthem?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Really? At
Yes.
a baseball game? Was that like the home run derby in 1997 or what? When did that happen?
Mine was better than the home run derby. And Roseanne.
How so? How do you stretch? I mean, there's only really did you do the full song? I mean, most people, the baseball version is only one lyric. I mean, Francis Scott Key wrote 5 lyrics to that. So you could, I guess, make it 20 minutes if you sung every single word.
No, I just stretch each word out. So when I say, "Can you see?" It's like,
You should have done the public comment like that to the DEA, just like spelled out. You know what I mean? Like the 5,000 character limit. That's the problem. You're doing like the where it's like.
Poor Bear. He sat through it. Bear sat through the national anthem for 19 minutes. I don't know how he did it.
Dude,
And he's
that's
just like,
impressive.
not again.
That's impressive. I mean, you should definitely. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we should try and create a record for that, like a Guinness World Record for longest national anthem. That'd be pretty funny.
I sent it in to Guinness. They didn't respond yet.
That's good. No, I think that the public comment that you were reading is pretty on par for what we're hearing. People are taking this opportunity to tell the DEA kind of like what they think about marijuana policy, not just Schedule 3. And I think a lot of the comments, you know, what's interesting is how spot on the comments are. Kat Packer at the Drug Policy Alliance really had a good assessment. I think like 68% of the comments were calling for descheduling. So people are really taking a moment here to tell the DEA what they really feel about Schedule 3. I think that last commenter that you read, talking about it being a big joke to have it as an anabolic steroid or, you know, like testosterone or something like that. That is really key here, because if marijuana were placed in Schedule 3, I think that there are a lot of big misconceptions about what the reality of that might be. Again, folks, nobody out here is drinking a ketamine smoothie that they just got at the local steroid cafe and sprinkling a little bit of craft codeine on top for flavor. That's not what will happen. I mean, as far as state policy in cannabis goes, even here in New Jersey, where things are under a corporate cartel, we're way beyond the strict, sort of very strict regulations that would be in place with an actual world of Schedule 3. So I'm glad that people are taking a moment to make a comment. I'm glad that you made your comment too. And as far as you know, everybody making a comment, you still have until it's 11:59 in the morning. So there's an hour and a half about left to make, about 90 minutes left. You don't have to send it, you know, you don't have to send in an academic article. This is a public comment period, and they are seeking more, you know, comments from the public and less academic papers for sure. So even if you have a minute to just type what you think about, I would, again, what we're encouraging people to say is take this opportunity to tell the DEA to remove marijuana from the CSA entirely. And that's called descheduling. Right now, you're commenting on the prospect of making marijuana Schedule 3. And so that's what we're seeing comments on. I see you got another one on the screen. I'll let you get to your Garrison sort of National Public Radio type reading there.
I believe this plant should be removed from the CSA and completely descheduled, not rescheduled. There are far more negatives from tobacco and alcohol, even caffeine, compared to cannabis. The benefits and possible uses from the plant should be encouraged to be explored by anyone and everyone, not just companies who can afford the proper permits. Free the plants back to Mother Nature!
I think you should have a side business reading people's like birthday cards for them. So like, instead of sending the birthday card to the person, we'll send them to you. And then on their birthday, you can open all their cards and read them like that, which would be awesome. I think
Like Bruce Buffer.
I don't know what that is, but a birthday card reading service might be fun. What is Bruce?
The UFC guy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are
Bruce Buffer sounds like Max Headroom's long lost cousin or something like that. So, I do think that the majority of public comments are going to call for something other than Schedule 3. And again, that's the public taking an opportunity to tell the DEA what they feel. Now, what can the DEA do? That's the other question. Right now, they're being asked to consider moving marijuana to Schedule 3. In the past, there have been 16, before this, there have been 16 rescheduling requests, all of which the DEA has fought tooth and nail and essentially won. Marijuana has remained in Schedule 1 of the CSA, and the states have instead regulated the cannabis plant away from that. But it's not like people haven't tried. There have been any number of administrative law attempts and a couple of administrative law rulings, and some profound ones. A DEA administrative law judge in 1986 named Francis Young commented on the grand medical efficacy of cannabis, and yet it remains Schedule 1. There have been court rulings, other administrative rulings, but essentially the DEA is 16-0 in successfully defending Schedule 1. And I've wondered if this is not the role of an obtuse agency per se, if the DEA isn't just mandated to do this sort of, the CSA in itself is an illogical act. It is a product of politics and not science. And the DEA has a lot of really complicated rules that say they have a mandate to maintain it, essentially. I have to point out to folks that there are no whole plants in Schedule 3. I mean, there are no whole plants. I believe I could only identify one whole plant that might be scheduled. But as I am aware, there are no whole plants available for scheduled prescription use in 2, 3, 4, or 5 today that are anything like cannabis. It's almost like the CSA is designed to keep a whole plant out of Schedule 2, 3, 4, or 5, which, might I add, is why tobacco is not in the CSA. Tobacco is a descheduled plant. And what we've asked the DEA and every administration since Nixon to do is remove marijuana from the CSA completely, like tobacco. Alcohol is also not scheduled, and it's not a scheduled substance, which is bizarre in its own right. But the idea that tobacco, this plant, is not scheduled as part of the CSA, and let me tell you, it would be difficult to try and put tobacco in the CSA today. Even other than Schedule 1, it would be monumentally difficult to find a definition in the CSA that would fit tobacco. And that's why we don't, one of the many good reasons, we don't feel like the CSA scheduling definitions fit marijuana or cannabis at all. And that's why advocates like me, I mean, I'm coming on, close to 30 years of working on the same concept of descheduling cannabis. It's not a new idea. Ultimately, the DEA has an interesting authoritative place here. They could, if they wanted to, start a proceeding to deschedule cannabis today. And if they chose, they could do that. That's what my comment asked them to do. I just submitted mine, by the way. Can you see mine there? I literally submitted mine a few minutes ago. I'm having a problem doing things on my computer other than the stream at the same time. So maybe you can tell me if mine showed up.
It doesn't show up right away. It may show up in a few hours.
That's interesting. Well, I certainly got an email saying that everything went through. So that's good news. So let's make sure I have that confirmation.
Marijuana is not a gateway drug nor addictive. The pharmaceutical industry is so wrong. I feel marijuana should be rescheduled and treated like alcohol or cigarettes. We as a nation need to stop believing lies. I am in 100% agreement of rescheduled cannabis to a Schedule 3.
So you don't see your own comment there yet either?
No.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, there are some parameters for the comments that they're screened through. I hope everyone noticed that. And unfortunately, I think that it was a good opportunity for the organizations to help take a role here. But I think that they're kind of screening out like organizational form letters or whatever. But so you really had to have an individual comment to come across.
Bear, I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
You kind of had to have an individualized.
No. I'm talking to Bear. Bear, what did you say?
I'm sorry.
I said you're not just reading all the good comments, right? You got to read the bad ones.
The first one was bad. The first one.
I'm sure there's many others.
Yeah, Bear, you're right. I mean, it's not like there aren't people who are saying, there are people who have commented to support Schedule 1. I mean, the smart approaches to marijuana or whatever, the SAM organizations, they're not smart at all, actually. They're like stupid approaches to marijuana. That's what that group should stand for. Stupid approaches to marijuana. SAM, stupid approaches to marijuana. Let's keep up prohibition. They really are astoundingly taking the position of maintaining prohibition, which is a bizarre place to be. So what do you think the DEA is going to do? Do you think the DEA is going to fight? So far, they had a chance to agree with Schedule 3, might I add, and they haven't. And what they could do next is, after this public comment period, they could ask for like administrative law rulings. And that could extend this process well into next year as to whether we get an answer as to whether this turns into any kind of reform at all. Because if this fizzles out, marijuana remains in Schedule 1 and nothing happens.
This rescheduling will benefit many people. I have been a New Jersey medical patient since 2019. It has helped me tremendously with my GI issues. No other stomach medication has helped as much. I truly hope this gets pushed through so it opens the path to allow me to take my medicine across state lines. Yes.
It's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, I like the format, though. The format here of how you can read the comments. I do like this format. I think it's modern and good. And I do think it's nice to have this level of transparency. Wouldn't it be cool if we could see like how legislators interact with bills in the same way?
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to see the emails that flew back and forth in New Jersey about the Oprah bill. Jeez. Fun times, man. Fun times. So, yeah, you probably have to go really far back. The prohibitionists were really early to the game. I'm surprised at how many comments are being submitted. Yeah, go like, really early on. And if you really want to see, Stupid Approaches to Marijuana's statement, you can look up their website, and they issued their press release with their statement.
When do they start doing this, Chris?
May 22nd.
May 22nd. So we're going to go May 22nd to...
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, this was a 60-day public comment period. It did open on May 22nd. And that was because on May 16th, the Department of Justice issued their official regulation to reschedule. And that opened the public comment period. A little bit more background on this is a comment to the DEA. So don't put your address and social security number in there or any photos of your home grow. Just FYI. There is a Dropbox section where you can send some pictures. Don't do that. But I would say, again, you've got about another, an hour and 20 minutes here to submit your comment. We encourage everybody to do so. You can go to regulations.gov. And if you search, how to submit a comment on DEA, National Normal at NORML.org. And the Drug Policy Alliance, which is, I believe, DPA.org. And also Students for Sensible Drug Policy, which is SSDP.org. These are the three sort of major reform organizations working on drug policy every day. And they've all created an interface to help you make your public comment. So the head of the DEA right now is the former Attorney General of New Jersey. Her name is Ann Milgram. And everybody was kind of surprised that she didn't go along with Schedule 3, announced that the DEA was going along with Schedule 3 right away. I'm not surprised by that. Unfortunately, it's probably not as much up to whoever is in charge of DEA and more up to the rules, the very weird and illogical rules that the agency has to follow. There's also something which is the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. They've weighed in on whether scheduling is a good idea or not. And, I wanted to point this out. This is actually newsworthy in that I heard this morning back from the spokespeople at the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. I had asked them if they were going to submit a public comment, and they said that they were going to submit theirs this morning. So I hope that they actually do. We'll see if they get theirs in time today. They're really kind of cutting it to the wire, but it's okay. The CRC has something to say about this. Any state regulatory agency, if the federal government were to reschedule or deschedule cannabis, it would matter to what they do every day. And it would matter in how they could potentially in the future have to regulate these things. So I encourage them to submit comment, and other regulators I spoke with across the country. So I'm really interested to see what they say and what their comment is too from the regulatory standpoint.
Dan says this shouldn't be an issue. Marijuana was prohibited by racism, courtesy of Harry Anslinger. Those who know, know. If not, learn how this racist set the hooks for this. You guys want to cut down on racism? How can we do that when this prohibition reminds us about it every single day? Fix what you guys messed up. You owe this to the families and individuals in prison for a plant that is less harmful than water. It should be regulated in the same way as alcohol are. Yeah, I know somebody who died from drinking water on a radio show. She died from drinking too much water.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
That?
Jesus.
Yeah, and so yeah, cannabis is safer than water.
Well, I mean, everything in moderation. You could fall, a bale of marijuana could fall off of a large height and land upon you, and it could become dangerous as it falls to your life.
Hey, don't forget True Leaf. Don't forget True Leaf. They killed the worker.
Yeah, or you could work for corporate. You could work for a corporate cartel that puts you in unsafe working conditions. That makes it a little
So
dangerous.
I believe that marijuana is the only thing on the planet that you can't take too much of and kill yourself with.
Yes, you can't. You can't kill yourself
because there is just about everything else you can take too much of, don't matter what it is, and it'll kill you.
We tried this morning with that big blunt of Tomahawk. We smoked a big blunt of Tomahawk. I thought I was going to die.
It killed me, but it sat me down.
You guys are funny. Yeah, I mean, again, that's the problem with Schedule 3 is that, and I have to point out, again, I have a presidential pardon for possession of a half a gram of cannabis in a national park. My case would still happen if marijuana were Schedule 3. So if marijuana were Schedule 3 and I was walking around with it in a national park, they could still bring my whole case and prosecute me under the same law, because it doesn't matter what schedule it's in, as long as it's scheduled kind of at all. As long as it's in the CSA at all, the law about possession in a national park refers to CDS, which in law enforcement parlance means a controlled dangerous substance, CDS. And it's not a controlled dangerous substance unless it's scheduled in the CSA. Alcohol and tobacco are not considered CDS, as it were. So the only way to get rid of a case like mine, getting convicted of a half gram in a national park and having to get a presidential pardon for it, is to remove marijuana from the CSA and put it next to alcohol and tobacco, so it's not CDS in law enforcement terms. Yeah, it is. You know, I agree with you. I mean, the safety of marijuana, that's the thing. Like, imagine if you tried to put tobacco into Schedule 3 today. It would never ever even come close to the safety tests that are available in there. And tobacco, again, as a whole plant, has many derivatives, as the vape culture of vaping nicotine today really shows, tobacco-based vaping. So, I think that we really need to re-understand cannabis as a plant under regulations. This CSA Schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, literally none of them work for the cannabis plant. It simply is created to keep it out. So the only answer, after the DEA has fought rescheduling 16 times, after the country and tens of millions of voters, including 3 million here in New Jersey just 4 years ago, legalized marijuana and go away from federal prohibition completely, I think it's time to stop messing around with rescheduling. I think the DEA can't ignore the descheduling option here, and they shouldn't. If you read the HHS document, their own comments hint towards descheduling, and the DEA and the White House and the DOJ, they could take an action to deschedule cannabis instead of this rescheduling that we're under right now.
I'm providing comments in support of the reclassification of botanical cannabis. I suffer from chronic pain. I'm 67 years old and I'm a veteran. Since Virginia opened up the use of cannabis for medical use, I no longer need to rely on opioids. It works for me. Cannabis clearly does not meet the necessary criteria of either a Schedule 1 or a Schedule 2 controlled substance. While I believe cannabis should be removed from the CSA altogether, thereby harmonizing federal cannabis policy with most of those UA states, I nonetheless do not oppose the factual basis underlying HHS recommendation to move botanical cannabis to Schedule 3 or lower. It would be arbitrary and capricious for the DEA to reject HHS findings of fact and to maintain existing prohibitions on the cannabis plant.
That's fair. 100% fair. Yeah, it is, and this is an interesting process in which you get to read these comments. It's very good. Yeah, and the rescheduling option is something, moving marijuana to Schedule 3 to any activist like me is something that we've long seen as one of the goofiest things you could possibly try. Schedule 3 is just not a right fit. Even if the CSA were to allow it, it's not going to be the right fit. By the way, the way that the DEA has successfully defended Schedule 1, and there have been other requests to move it to Schedule 2, 3, anything other than Schedule 1, there have been rescheduling requests and attempts to petition this administratively. But ultimately, the DEA has relied on the medicinal evaluation component of this and also the addiction evaluation component. They claim that there's a high use of addiction, and they also claim that there's no, under their own definition, relevant medical use. The problem is that they can't expand beyond their own definition. They are an IBM computer when it comes to drugs. And the DEA might be very much caught in a semantic legal treadmill, as it were, and forced to sort of keep running on that treadmill. I think that that's why the White House making the scheduling review is so important. It was President Nixon and Congress in 1970 that created modern prohibition. And it is observers like me have long wondered that it would take a White House and Congress working together to really find a solution away from that. And we're just about there. I mean, in one of the comments I made is that one of the reasons we should deschedule instead of reschedule is that Congress is ready to deschedule cannabis. There are multiple bills from Democrats and Republicans where descheduling is the core action of their plan to end prohibition. So there really is ultimately a plan to do this in Congress. Whereas Schedule 3, there really isn't a plan for that. And at the state level, we went way beyond Schedule 3. There is no state that really tried a strict sort of Schedule 3 view of their programs along the way. So, yeah, I think that voters' experience, Americans' experience with cannabis as a state-regulated substance, it doesn't look like ketamine to them. It looks like over-the-counter stuff. It looks a lot less regulated than ketamine.
Somebody spammed this site. Somebody named Justin Phillips spammed it with like 50 messages. The same message 50 times. Like, don't do that. It makes it harder for us.
Maybe he thought his comment wasn't coming through and he wanted to be sure it was going. I'm just, as a Quaker, I try and see the light. So maybe he had a compulsive phone problem where he just like click submit 50 times.
Oh boy, it's still here.
But you did the form, and it would take a dedicated effort to pull that off, honestly.
I know. What is this guy doing? Like, seriously, 50 times.
You should look him up and see who he is. I'm sure they'll filter that out somehow, maybe.
His name? Oh, it's different people. He's doing it under different people's names. Oh, wow.
It's a form letter.
Wow. It's a bot. They have a bot doing this.
Nah, it's a form letter from somebody. I mean, they put it together like a form letter.
Oh, yeah, okay. Gotcha. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's different people sending the same letter. It's not helping our show. I support the rescheduling of cannabis to Schedule 3 for the increased accessibility to studies, to better understand what cannabis is and is not effective at treating, and to what actual health risks might yield. 2, support the agricultural industry to produce the commodity locally. 3, as a mental health tool. Additionally, I believe it should be a step towards declassification and regulation in the adult market, just like alcohol is made available in this way. As a substance used similarly, like alcohol, and theorized to be far safer with less health implications, there should be a clear pathway to legalization and descheduling as part of this initiative.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There, the idea that DEA could ignore all these calls for descheduling. I, I mean, I guess they could. I mean, in the past, they've been pretty. They put the blinders on to anything but what's right in front of them. They also claim to have this broad authority. I mean, DEA is trying to play both sides of the fence here, where they say they have the final authority. Nobody can do anything without them, but they're only going to narrowly consider cannabis in a treadmill of circular logic rules that only they understand behind closed doors. So they really want it both ways. It's strange. That looks like a short and effective one. Let's see.
Marijuana has a long history of being effective in medicinal contexts. Additionally, anti-marijuana legislation affect people of color at unfairly high rates.
That's good. It's important that people make a comment, even if it's a few sentences. Go ahead and do something like that. It is important for the DEA to hear from the public on cannabis policy. They so rarely have a public comment period like this. There have been over 30,000 public comments. So that's good news. But don't think that the volume of comments means that you shouldn't say anything. There's an hour and 10 minutes left. We're counting down the last hour. We're calling July 22nd, 2024 will always be known as DEA Day. DEA Weed Day. This being the close of the comment period on the 17th rescheduling request for cannabis that the agency has seen so far. The very first one from the White House. So there has never been a White House who has asked the DEA to consider the scheduling of cannabis. And that is what's notable today. This week, President Biden decided not to run for the next election. And he's endorsing the vice president, Kamala Harris, who I got to meet this year and talk about marijuana policy a bunch in the White House. And I have to say that a Harris administration would be a lot different and like a lot better on cannabis policy, just in my opinion. So what is interesting is that today, again, is the culmination of President Biden. This will be a legacy item for President Biden. The fact that in 2022, the White House announced the scheduling review that we're commenting on today and issued a pardon to people like me, that's historic. And it will be looked back upon as something that may have broken through the wall of federal prohibition. This is the most action that's happened on federal cannabis policy in like 50 years, quite frankly. Congress hasn't done like much of anything on this. We talk a lot. There's bills every year. There's strong support. There's growing support for sure. But as far as tangible action, you have to give the Biden-Harris administration a heck of a lot of credit here for in 2022, seeing that if they took that action then, by this time, 2024, right before the election, we'd have this public comment period and have this strong discussion. And, you know, the last time that Kamala Harris ran for president, she said legalize marijuana, not decriminalize it. And she said that again in the White House in the Roosevelt Room. So, you know, I have a lot of confidence. By the way, the MORE Act is one of the things that deschedules cannabis as a bill in Congress. And Vice President Harris, when she was a senator, was the lead sponsor of the MORE Act in the U.S. Senate and the first sponsor of it, might I add. So I'm fairly confident that a Harris administration would be a heck of a lot different on this, and a more positive, more engaged, and more forward about descheduling cannabis. So far, again, the Schedule 3 is an interesting notion, but keep in mind that the president can take this same action that we've seen to deschedule cannabis and have that be a directed recommendation. So, that is something that could happen from the president. DEA doesn't even have to wait, though. That's the funny thing. The DEA does have the authority to start a descheduling process on their own. Maybe they're going to hear all these comments. Maybe DEA will hear these comments about descheduling and call for that action, and we'll see what happens. That would be the win of wins. That would be the most outside chance right there, like the 2% chance.
I am a nurse and nurse practitioner who cares for the adult and geriatric populations. I believe it's important to state the importance of descheduling cannabis and educating healthcare professionals to care for patients who are interested in becoming and using medicinal cannabis as an alternative medication for various ailments that have been backed by evidence-based research along with community members. Also, the affordability of cannabis is another area that is important, particularly for communities of color, to have equal access to cannabis to treat chronic conditions. Another area of concern is the social justice part, making sure once cannabis is legal, updating laws and policies surrounding cannabis and help individuals expunge records from the past pertaining to cannabis. Educating parents, communities, teens, and healthcare providers is very important, and I would like to see policy surrounding this area as well.
It's good. Again, I think if people have we're just coming up on an hour and 5 minutes. Get an hour and 5 minutes to leave your comment here. It's pretty easy. Go to regulations.gov and do you have the? Make sure you put up a link to this in the chat. I'm having a little trouble with my chat on my computer today, but make sure to put up a link there and make sure to tell people how to make their comment.
Let me see. Let me put the link up here. And actually, I could put the link. Yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. Let me put it here.
You can go to decriminalizemarijuana.com and you can go to normal.org, NORML.org, SSDP.org. Just laying out some places that people can go. But yeah, put the link to make a public comment in the chat here. For sure. Because that's, here, let me go to the comment section. Yeah, put it in the comment section for sure.
I'll put it on the screen here.
Yeah, just so that people can see the link.
I put the link there, and I'll put the link in a banner.
Because it only takes a minute. You do have to fill in your information. Make sure that you're commenting as an individual, but it only takes a minute. So make sure to throw the link up there so that people have it handy.
All right, this is the link for that comment. So if you go to that link, oh, that's not good. That looks ugly. Hold on. That's not good. That's better. Okay. All right, you can see that there. You just go to regulations.gov/comment DEA 2024. That's the link. You can find it from there. If you can't find the link, this is the reason why cannabis isn't legal.
Oh my goodness.
I'm blaming you. If you can't find the link, it's your fault. Cannabis is not legal. It's your fault.
Hey, listen, my screen froze up again. I'm going to go out and come back in. I'll be right back.
Alrighty. Patients, adult consumers, communities disproportionately impacted by criminalization and state medical and adult use cannabis programs and the businesses that participate in them would remain illegal if cannabis is moved to Schedule 3. It's 2024, not 1924. It's time for the federal government to address cannabis as the public health issue that is regulated for public health and safety. Also, how is it that the DEA and HHS have a whole section in their analysis dedicated to the history of federal cannabis criminalization that failed to mention Harry Anslinger's racism, President Nixon's racism, Schaefer Commission, which back in the 70s ultimately recommended that cannabis to be criminalized. The American people deserve the truth about federal cannabis criminalization's origins. Who's this guy? Anonymous. It's okay. You can remain anonymous. It's all good. The form letters are what bugs me because I'm getting the same message over and over. And I'm like, I get it, bro. I get it. This guy here, his name is Anonymous. And he says, deschedule, not reschedule. Rescheduling is nothing but a number change, as it will not allow American citizens to exercise their innate right to choose and utilize a substance as they wish. All rescheduling will do is push cannabis into big pharma's hands. Descheduling is the only solution. How can anyone justify cannabis being a scheduled substance while tobacco and alcohol are not? We cannot justifiably call ourselves the land of the free anymore, as the government continues to overstep its bounds every day after day. If America was truly the land of the free, then American citizens would be free to cultivate their own cannabis without being taxed and incarcerated for it. Yes! You guys are firing me up, too. I love it. That was a good one. I saw this one already. This is another one. Another form letter. I keep getting the form letters here. Come on, man. Enough with the form letters, bro. I could have done that. Here we go again. Oh, it's just a different form letter. Let's jump around. This is like the first couple of days that they had comments, and I'm going to the first couple of days of comments here. About time. Step in the right direction, but it should be fully legalized. This is what the people want. Everyone knows it's a medicinal plant, and it was only made illegal out of corporate greed. Now is the time to right the wrong and make it available for everyone. That's right. What's your name? Steve. That's right, Steve. That's right, Steve. You got it, brother. Okay. What happened here? What was this? Oh, wow. Wow. They're sending us a $25 gift card. That's good. I was never going to go back there again. Sorry, a little personal issue. We got treated poorly at a restaurant. No, I guess they're giving us a gift certificate because I cried on Facebook. They're like, contact us. We'd like to. No, I'm not contacting you. I'm just putting my. No, they contacted us and said, here's some money. Shut up. Stop talking about us. Don't protest my business. I said, I'm going to protest you. Don't mess with me. I'll protest you. I got nothing but time to protest you. So there's 30,000 comments. I hope you put yours in. Even hey, look how small this one is. I completely support Schedule 3 for cannabis. This should have been done years and years ago. Just write that. Just do that. Write that in. It'll take you 5 minutes. You could make a difference. You could change the world with one little comment. You don't even know. If you do nothing, you'll get nothing. If you do something, you might get something. The fact that alcohol is completely legal and marijuana is not is total hypocrisy. I believe weed should be uncontrolled completely. The least you could do is remove it from the comparison to the other harmful drugs. That's right. Thank you. Oh, this form letter, another form letter. We're skipping the form letters. I'm sorry. I already read a couple of them. Oh, it's like, oh my goodness. Form letter after form letter here. Ay. Really? I'm not going to Wow. This is only like day 2 of comments. People are commenting. Like 30,000 people commented. Add yours today. Please take some time. You have another 45 minutes. You got 45 minutes to do it. Here, write something like this. This is a modest improvement, but full legalization, release of all nonviolent offenders, and expungement of records is needed. In a free country, people have a right to choose their own consumption habits without having their families torn apart and livelihoods ruined. All quibbling about risk and reward is frankly irrelevant at the foot of freedom. Free Palestine. I'm in favor of this rescheduling as a strong step for the federal government to take in efforts to unify the states under reasonable science-based policy around cannabis. As a former professional firefighter and paramedic, bachelor's degree, associate's degrees, top cadet from Fire Academy, I was barred from returning to work after notifying my employer that I plan to follow my doctor's recommendations to use cannabis off duty. My employer cited the federal illegality of cannabis as their primary reason for refusing to work with me and union leaders to amend their random drug testing policy to better accommodate medicinal cannabis patients while continuing to maintain and enforce a strict zero tolerance of workplace impairment. Unfortunately, I have left the field of firefighting and emergency medicine because of this. My short story is not a unique one. Our nation's first responders have been disproportionately affected by the Schedule I status of cannabis and the weaponization of the term safely sensitive position. Safety-sensitive positions by non-federal entities. I can personally attest to the horrors that first responders witness and the cumulative effects of years and years of absorbing the realities of what human suffering looks like in modern-day America. I can now attest to how much relief cannabis can provide to these mental burdens that so often become pathological when introduced properly into some health wellness regimen. Thank you for taking steps to unravel this increasingly convoluted and nonsensical ball of yarn.
I like your readings. I think the DEA should hire you to read their comments as be the like you should be the Siri or the Alexa for the DEA comment section. You know what I mean? You should be the voice of this.
These are fun.
That'd be fun.
I
I am impressed with the sort of personalized nature of a lot of the comments too. Like how many of them are really genuine public taking a moment here to talk to the DEA directly in this rare instance that they allow the public to do this.
So how are they going to go through all these comments?
Probably AI. No, I'm sure. Chat GPT. Yeah, no, I'm sure that they have a staff and a team and a process to review the comments and at least highlight them for the management to see. One would imagine that that's how it goes. The public comments can be used in two ways: to affect the action itself or to spur the agency to do what everyone is expecting them to do next, which is call for administrative law hearings. So perhaps what the DEA could do next is take these comments and go, oh my goodness, there's been such a huge amount of public comment, and we don't think that rescheduling is the right move. We think a judge should decide, or perhaps a panel of administrative judges, and this case may be.
Smart approaches to marijuana. Sam respectfully requests a 30-day extension to the comment period on the proposed rule that would reschedule marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under Controlled Substances Act.
Does that mean that the prohibitionists are asking for an extension on their homework? What's up with that?
There's an attachment.
They've had 54 years to do their homework. Don't download it. It's got a virus that will smoke.
I know. I'm not going to download this. I want to see it. Really?
I mean, if Sam put an attachment there, I'm already suspicious.
It says smart approaches to marijuana sent this in, but I am not.
Letter to the DEA requesting comment extension.
I'm not.
I'm sure you can go to their website and find it. They're never quiet about it.
Sam is trying to ask for an extension of the comment period by saying they need time to compile information. Sam has been around for some time, which tells me they are an organization that profits from marijuana prohibition. If they had legitimate evidence that marijuana is a problem, wouldn't they already have compiled it by now?
They need new stuff because their old stuff isn't working, Lefty. Their old stuff didn't work. People don't want federal marijuana prohibition. They don't want local marijuana prohibition. They don't want people arrested, jailed. People want to smoke weed. It's kind of like the problem that Sam has. I mean, Sam is at this point running almost like a sex abstinence campaign, like for marijuana, and that it's not going to work.
All right, here we go. Harumph, harumph, harumph. I have concerns about marijuana being moved from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 substance. I've been working in the field of substance use for 25 years, harumph, harumph, solely with adolescents. The substance of choice that is hardest for students to stop using is marijuana, and is the most prominently used substance for the students I work with. Students who are using cannabis daily develop a substance use disorder and often go to use other substances. Of greatest concern to me, though, is how cannabis today is very high THC, upwards of 99% at times. This high THC is impacting youth negatively and increases anxiety, depression, and psychosis. Being diagnosed for youth with a cannabis use disorder. Cannabis is addictive for youth, both physically and mentally. Youth report cravings, withdrawals, and tolerance to the substance. When they try to stop, they report insomnia or report significant irritability and difficulty controlling their moods, anger, depression, anxiety. One of the greatest concerns is the increasing number of students I am seeing being diagnosed with psychosis who are using cannabis. This number has increased significantly as our rural town has increasingly large numbers of cannabis dispensaries and a perception that cannabis is completely safe and not addictive. Cannabis has been shown to increase use of suicidal tendencies. Youth brains are still developing, and many youth are using high THC in their pens multiple times a day to the point of being high the whole entire day. This is directly impacting our youth in numerous ways. Dropping out of school, failing classes, poor school attendance, behavioral issues. Please look at reputable research by SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and Johnny's Ambassadors. Both of these websites have research demonstrating why cannabis is highly addictive and should never be moved to a Schedule 3 drug.
Did you say Johnny's Ambassadors?
Yeah,
that sounds like something that you link through Grindr to. Okay,
what is that?
What is that? Johnny's Ambassadors sounds like a strip club in Miami. I'm just saying. All right. I mean, Sam almost sounds like something that you'd link through Grindr. SAM exclamation point. You know, like all caps all the time. Oh my God. You know, it's funny that youth, I mean, again, especially for the youth who've been through COVID-19 and the pandemic and isolation and everything like that, that people perceive that cannabis is a big contributor to a lot of these mental health conditions. I mean, I think that the honest conversation to have about teens and cannabis is how can it help? So, how can we? That's the group that we really have the biggest amount of stigma upon for no good reason. I mean, I think teens find the modern healthcare system less accessible than they do alternative healthcare like cannabis therapy. So, I do think that it's time that we have a better conversation. In Canada, by the way, 18 and 19-year-olds have legal access to cannabis. I mean, on a good way, most programs in the United States, medical access programs, do allow those under 18 to register and even have access to dispensaries. So that's good news. But a lot of them, like New Jersey, if you're under 18, you can't go in a dispensary without a parent or a caregiver or somebody like that. So that's an interesting case too. So I do think it's interesting how, again, Sam, stupid approaches to marijuana is usually better organized than to ask for an extension in public comment, because they give us another 30 days. They'll get another 30,000 comments where 70% of them call for descheduling.
As a chairman of a New Hampshire-based drug prevention group,
Now you're finding all the Sam ones now.
I am appalled. I'm appalled.
Oh my god,
Brother,
I am appalled at the federal government's efforts to reclassify marijuana to Schedule 3. Marijuana is highly addictive. The psychoactive drug that's causing havoc in communities all across our country. It's ruining the potential of unknown numbers of individuals under the age of 25, causing disruptions in the workplace, leading to more instances of psychosis. It's time for the federal government to protect public health and not big marijuana tobacco lobby. Stu Hamola, Chairman, Sam, New Hampshire. I don't know if she's a guy or a girl, so I'm going to do a guy voice. I'm writing to register my opposition to the recommendation to move marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act. Rescheduling marijuana would allow the marijuana industry to begin deducting normal business expenses, including advertising and marketing expenses. This would make the industry enormously profitable and incentivize them to spend even more on advertising and marketing. With this, we can expect marijuana sales to grow exponentially and harms associated with marijuana use to rise in tandem. Big Tobacco taught us all too well the deleterious impact of advertising on youth. The more teens exposed to tobacco advertising, the more likely they are to start smoking. The same will be true with marijuana. The marijuana industry will undoubtedly take a page out of Big Tobacco's marketing playbook, making marijuana use look glamorous and benign with celebrity endorsements, candy flavoring already seen in marijuana edibles, product placement in movies, and more. Perhaps more alarming, even without the expected deluge of ads and slick marketing, marijuana use is at an all-time high. Teen use of marijuana is at a 30-year high, with more teens purportedly smoking marijuana than tobacco. Among youth adults 19 to 30, 26% used in the past month, compared to 17% in 2011. The recommendation from HHS failed to take into account the actual relative potential for abuse or harms associated with use. Contrary to popular narrative, marijuana can be addictive. In fact, many, as 1 in 3 past year marijuana users met the clinical criteria for cannabis use disorder. People who self-medicate with marijuana are not exempt from becoming addicted to it. According to research at Massachusetts General Hospital, using cannabis products to treat pain, anxiety, and depression failed to improve these symptoms, while doubling the risk of developing addictive symptoms of cannabis use disorder. With the exception of one study of medical marijuana patients in Maryland. The review from HHS failed to acknowledge or consider the link between marijuana and psychosis. This is especially concerning in light of the rising potency of marijuana. Daily users of marijuana, over 10% THC, are nearly 5 times more likely to develop a psychotic disorder than most non-users. A 2023 study in Denmark determined that 30% of cases of schizophrenia among 21 to 30-year-old males could have been averted if cannabis use disorder had been prevented. A 22 study found that the hospital discharges for marijuana-associated psychosis were higher in states with legal marijuana, another precursor if those push full-scale commercialization have their way. Marijuana is especially concerning in young people, a factor the HHS failed to adequately address. The National Center for Education's statistics say adolescent marijuana use has been associated with lower academic performance and a higher risk of dropping out of high school. Colorado, the first state to legalize marijuana users, warns youth who use marijuana regularly are more likely to have a hard time learning, problems remembering, and lower math and reading scores. These effects can last weeks after the last time they used marijuana. Recognizing that most remains unknown about marijuana, researchers are still studying how long marijuana's effects last and whether some changes may be permanent. Finally, while some states recognize medical marijuana, there is in fact no accepted medical use. Let me repeat that. Finally, while some states recognize medical marijuana, there is in fact no accepted medical use. Unlike other drugs in Schedule 3, marijuana is not FDA approved to treat, cure any disease that is not available prescription in any state. In 2023, the AMA adopted a position statement that encourages hospitals and healthcares to not recommend patient use of non-FDA approved cannabis or cannabis-derived products within healthcare facilities until such time as federal laws or regulations permit its use. I encourage you to follow the science and public health evidence and keep marijuana Schedule 1. Wow. What the heck? These people are so angry.
It does seem, it's funny. There was a guy who passed away who I really admired a lot. I had a lot of fun hanging out with. His name was Dr. Robert Melamede. And he lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and he was an early sort of pioneer in cannabis therapy, along with Lester Grinspoon. I used to hang out with Lester and Dr. Bob at normal conferences, interestingly enough. But anyway, Bob's theory on cannabis prohibitionists is that they were so against having any cannabinoids in their system that they were cannabinoid deficient, and that they were so cannabinoid deficient, it was affecting their point of view, their mindset. Like, if you smoke marijuana or consume cannabis, you might be happier and more relaxed. But if you eschew any cannabinoids in your system in any way whatsoever your entire life, you might not be so happy at the end of it. So we'll see. It does seem like prohibitionists, the people who defend Schedule 1, have a certain thing about it. I think in the last one, I don't know, did you slip? Was it a slip of the tongue, or did they actually write Colorado, the first state to legalize marijuana users? Did they say that, or did you say that?
I think they said that, yeah. That was part of
I
it.
actually think that that's more accurate. Like, the truth is that the CSA is not made to regulate substances. Its intent is to regulate humans and behavior. It's to regulate us, the part of society that consumes cannabis. And I actually think that that's when I work on cannabis reform. It's interesting that sometimes your enemy can say something that resonates, but certainly that's true in all battle and wars. But In that case, I feel the same way. I feel like that I work on legalization because we're working to legalize us, not the plant per se, but the people who are around it. We endured prohibition. It has affected people more than it's affected plants. Cannabis itself, it survived prohibition. It's a plant. It's amazing. But it's the people who survived prohibition. That's what I'm most impressed with. And that's kind of like what you're hearing from. Do you want to hear what my comment was since it's
Yes.
not up on the screen there? Okay, here's my, since I won't do mine in any special voices, I'll just do mine in my voice if that's okay. I'm not going to have you read it, but here's my public comment.
Can you read it
this
like
comment?
Can you read it like me? Not kidding.
I'll tell you what. In another show, I'll send you my public comment, and I'll enjoy watching you read it in your. How about that?
Okay.
I'll start at the end of the formalities here. This scheduling review was started by the Biden-Harris White House in parallel with the mass pardon of low-level marijuana offenses. This dual action is the biggest shift in federal cannabis policy we have seen since Congress began modern prohibition in 1970. I am grateful to have a presidential pardon for marijuana possession. Yet, only removing cannabis completely from the Controlled Substances Act would prevent cases like mine. In 2013, the Eastern District of Pennsylvania U.S. Attorney prosecuted me for having a half a gram of cannabis in a national park. In 2014, I was convicted and sentenced to a $3,000 cash fine, 2 years of strictly supervised probation, and a permanent federal criminal record. And unfortunately, it would all still happen under Schedule 3. There are tens of millions of voters all across the political spectrum, a wide grassroots base of American cannabis consumers, medical patients, and reform-minded people who have unified in our support to end cannabis prohibition. We have demonstrated our resolve by changing the laws of the states in every way possible. That includes medical access, decriminalization, and adult use regulation. None of those reforms in any way mirror the very strict rules of Schedule 3. There are no state-regulated over-the-counter sales of any otherwise federal scheduled substances. The DEA has been asked to consider moving marijuana to Schedule 3 under the current review. Yet the rescheduling concept has been fought by the DEA no less than 16 times. It may not be an obtuse agency at work, but an utterly illogical law that the DEA is tasked with maintaining. The Controlled Substances Act is an antiquated and deeply flawed scheme. The CSA itself and decades of subsequent regulations have been designed to keep whole plants, especially cannabis, out of Schedule 2, 3, 4, or 5. The CSA itself was a product of politics, not of science. John Ehrlichman, who was part of the Nixon administration, revealed the core of the CSA's intent during a 2016 interview with Harper's Magazine. And everybody knows that quote. I'm just going to say, did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. That's Ehrlichman's famous quote there. No doubt the DEA will fight this current rescheduling request because the agency is sadly mandated to maintain the broken system. The circular logic around the semantic and legal definitions of medicine in the CSA will likely confound administrative actions for rescheduling. However, DEA's own past arguments and the current HHS analysis actually point to the real solution, which is descheduling. The descheduling action requires no medicinal evaluation. Cannabis could be placed alongside alcohol and tobacco to be regulated by the states with an eventual federal framework. The reluctance of DEA to support any medical description for marijuana under the CSA scheme has actually kept the door open to descheduling. Notably, the current cannabis reform bills in Congress, the MORE Act, the States Act, CAOA, they all deschedule cannabis as the core action. Thus, Congress already has bills ready to move if there is any administrative action to deschedule, while there's really nothing to land the country in Schedule 3. If HHS, DEA, and the Department of Justice seek to take an administrative action, that would both match state laws and mesh with Congress, then it would be to remove marijuana from all scheduling in the CSA entirely. Again, pertinent to my own case, Schedule 3 substances in national parks or other federal lands are open to federal possession charges, as they are considered controlled dangerous substances. To be clear, our president has the power to recommend descheduling at any time. It is likely that the majority of public comments on this Schedule 3 review will actually urge the descheduling action. And the scheduling review for marijuana directed by the White House in 2022 does not predetermine an outcome. HHS also hinted that descheduling would be the ideal policy shift. So while DOJ has issued a regulation for rescheduling, the DEA could certainly choose not to ignore these calls for descheduling cannabis. The DEA should and could immediately, administratively begin a descheduling process for marijuana. Such an action is well within the agency's authority. Thank you. And that's it. That was my comment.
Awesome. That was perfect.
I appreciate that.
I love it.
Yeah, the government is sort of like an IBM computer. You really have to put in a punch card with all the right holes in all the right places. And when the Biden and Harris administration started the scheduling review for cannabis in 2022, and they also issued the pardons to thousands of people like me, I think that it also puts this scheduling review in a different context. DEA has fought those comments you read from Sam's stupid approaches to marijuana and people like that. Those comments won the day. I mean, they're essentially repeating the DEA's arguments in 16 rescheduling reviews that have already been unsuccessful. What could change now? We are in uncharted territory in that the White House is directly involved, that this is coming from the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, and that the DEA is part of that system. And it's not, yes, they have the authority and all these scheduling and descheduling requests, and they have a role here. But unlike the past, where the DEA have been the leading agency on this time the leading agency is the DOJ. This time, really, the leading agency is the White House itself. That's what maybe changes the game here. So in the past, I would have thought that this public comment period, they might ignore all these comments on descheduling. This time, the game has changed. And I do think that I'm glad that everybody's making these comments that we're seeing towards descheduling. And I really appreciate everyone making a comment. You have 29 minutes left. It's exactly 11:30 right now on the clock. Folks have until 11:59 Eastern time to go ahead and close and make the comments today.
We need you to cancel out people like this guy here.
Oh, you're reading more opposition comments. Fun times.
This is a guy called Krista Riddle. Rescheduling marijuana would have far-reaching negative impacts on our nation that is already suffering from tragic mental health, substance abuse, suicide, and overdose numbers. Numbers that represent children, parents, loved ones, friends, and others. Numbers that are underreported and leave lasting scars. Due to the high potency of today's marijuana products, normalization of drug use in our society, big business, mostly white-owned, that profit from marijuana. The black market's growth in areas of legalization. The increased availability of marijuana that spark increased usage, increased youth access, and lowered risk perception. And how marijuana can be a gateway drug for harder substances for those predisposed to addiction and mental health issues. I am adamantly against legalization. As someone who fights hard every day for those suffering from substance abuse disorders, mental health issues, and the protection of youth from underage consumption of marijuana and alcohol, New Jersey laws are far too lenient and turning a blind eye to underage use under their cannabis legalization. I see the struggles the families endure because of the lax attitude our nation has taken with marijuana use. It is not medicine! Social justice is an issue separate from legalization at the state and federal levels. Very few people in state and federal prisons are there simply for using marijuana. Protect our youth! As is your duty as leader of this country. Do not classify marijuana or reclassify. It is a drug that affects the brain and mental health with the potential for addiction. It's called cannabis use disorder, which is increasing along with cannabis-induced psychosis. Thanks to high-potency products and daily use via easy access and lowered risk perception of this drug. Along with legalization comes cartels, organized crime, pumping drugs into our urban communities that already have been hit hard by alcoholism and legal and illegal opioids. Let's learn from our mistakes with big tobacco and big pharma and alcohol and protect our citizens from the dangers of high-potency marijuana and exposure to normalizing these substances that alter the mind and body. Marijuana is not medicine. It actually increases anxiety and depression, as well as suicidal thoughts, especially for vulnerable populations, such as veterans with PTSD, those with mental health issues, and youth. Listen to Dr. Kevin Sabat of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Listen to him and all his evidence-based research that marijuana use should not be taken lightly or promoted. It is not harmless and has already ruined thousands of lives. Visit Smart Approaches to Marijuana. and every brain matters. That's right. Every brain matters. Or Johnny's Ambassadors.
Oh my God. It sounds like it doesn't. I mean, seriously, can't. Johnny's Ambassadors really does sound like a spinoff from Grindr. There's just nothing else for that. Or a strip club in Miami. Johnny's Ambassadors. Come on.
/ Laura Stack online.
That's rough. I'm sure I'm making fun of something that's like has some deep meaning behind it, and I'm gonna get karmic trouble for that. But it just sounds bad on the surface. Smart, Sam is not very good at their messaging. I've debated them many times in the past, and the groups do seem like, again, they're folks. This stuff worked with the DEA last time. You have 24 minutes to submit your public comment so that Sam, which I am happy to. I mean, I don't know what these other groups are. I should look them up after the show, but it's tough to see the flood of prohibitionists. I mean, prohibition doesn't happen by accident. There is a lobby for it to maintain it. It has been there for 54 years. We've changed state laws profoundly. I can't think of anything else in which state laws have so directly put in conflict with any federal law. States and the federal government are usually in exact alignment. But I think that's what's interesting about cannabis. We lost a lot of great heroes over time. But the author of Guitar Army, guy I interviewed many times, he used to talk about the social impact of marijuana. He was worried if we legalized marijuana, people would they wouldn't question their government as much because they wouldn't see how goofy it was. So that is kind of like a really interesting take on things too. So, but today is the last day to make public comment to the DEA about the prospect of them moving marijuana to Schedule 3. This is a really kind of a weird interim prospect. Schedule 3 drugs are things like ketamine, codeine, anabolic steroids, and THC is Schedule 1 drug, testosterone. So it doesn't make any sense to put cannabis in Schedule 3. Moreover, there are no whole plants in Schedule 3 available for prescription use. So it is not really a category that fits a whole plant as amazing as cannabis is. And I think that we would struggle to regulate it under Schedule 3. What advocates are asking for, and what most of the 37,000 public comments we've seen the DEA get in, are asking for descheduling, removing marijuana from the CSA entirely and putting it alongside another plant that we regulate called tobacco, and also alcohol, which is not in the CSA at all. So descheduling cannabis is what advocates and most of the public seem to be asking for. We'll see if the DEA heeds those calls and takes into consideration descheduling cannabis.
On behalf of Joe Johan, I feel I must say something about organizations like SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and individuals like SAM's president, Kevin Sabet. These are paid anti-cannabis reform entities who routinely misrepresent or outright lie when lobbying against any change in policy, like rescheduling. In many cases, lying while in Congress. I realize this is nothing new in Washington, but lying to Congress with no consequences is absurd. This has become commonplace with lobbyists from many sectors, industries, and is tainting our lawmaking processes and creating a time in which the public cannot even trust things being said in a congressional questioning. That is a very dangerous precedent. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, prohibition has corrupted politics. I don't disagree with that. Cannabis prohibition and even the legalization process and trying to get away from it has deeply corrupted a lot of politics from the state level to the federal government. Prohibition is not a good policy. It didn't work for alcohol. It's not working out very well for marijuana. And even worse, the Controlled Substances Act is not a very good scheme for controlling substances because it's made to control people. Not very well, might I add. So we really have a lot of things running against us on these policies in the United States right now. However, again, light at the end of the tunnel. Biden-Harris administration started this scheduling review that we're commenting on today. This is the first time that the DEA has had to consider a scheduling request, essentially from the White House. So that might put a little extra oomph in things. And there was a big change in what the next White House might look like. I think that if Biden had continued in the campaign, had been reelected, everybody in all these agencies would certainly have seen a second term pretty much. But maybe a Harris administration will shake things up a little bit. We'll see different people at the Department of Justice, maybe the DEA. It could be different players involved with this administration process in 2025. Vice versa, this whole process could stop too with a different president. So I have to point out that this is an administrative process. It's been started by the White House, which is awesome that the Biden-Harris White House did this. But today's final day of public comment is really interesting. So what do you see here? You're just
going through the list here.
You're scrolling through the website, just using me as background noise. I hear you. It's cool.
I found they want me to download their stuff, and I'm not downloading anything from Sam. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say, that group might have a computer virus that comes out and takes your marijuana potency down or something. Like somehow through the computer, Sam has a virus that will turn your 99% THC to 9% or something like that.
Good question. How much does Kevin Sabet from Sam make? How much does he make a year?
That's an interesting question. Kevin has his job as the director of that organization. It receives funding from any number of sort of hard to piece together political groups and individuals. The biggest funder of Sam in the past has been directly out of the pocket of a guy who lives here in New Jersey that we've talked about before, I think. Patrick Kennedy, the former congressman from Rhode Island. That's when you talked about a link, something about like better brains or something like that.
Yeah.
Patrick Kennedy lives in New Jersey now. He's a former congressman from Rhode Island. He is, in the Kennedy family of JFK and RFK and the like. And he did serve as a congressman in Rhode Island for many years. He wrote, in an odd turn of events, he woke up one day and he had taken a lot of Ambien, and he drove in an Ambien haze in a green Ford Mustang and crashed into the barrier around the front of Congress. And when the police got there, he thought that he was late for a vote, but Congress was not in session. So it was an interesting day. He checked himself into rehab the next day, and he came out of going to rehab for Ambien and other things, an anti-marijuana pro-brain advocate. So somewhere along the way in his recovery process, he became the funder and starter of the group SAM, and Kennedy pays that salary out of his pocket. I'm sure Kevin makes a comfortable salary of some sort, and his travel expenses seem to be paid for. He goes all around the country to maintain marijuana prohibition, and he's in and around Congress frequently. So he is the guy. He is the face of prohibition.
Elizabeth Ott says, while some states recognize medical marijuana, there is in fact no currently accepted medical use. Unlike other drugs in Schedule 3, marijuana is not FDA approved to cure or treat any disease and is not available for prescription in any state. The AMA adopted a position statement saying that it encourages hospitals and health systems to not recommend patient use of non-FDA approved cannabis or cannabis-derived products. So it's just more of the same.
Yeah.
They have this.
This is much, again, the prospect of the medicinal use of marijuana is really interesting to me because millions of Americans are using cannabis therapy every day. Arguably, more people in this country use cannabis therapy every day than ever before, and as a daily treatment for a variety of conditions and ailments. So I really have to, I think it's okay to have this debate about what is better and what is not, pharmaceuticals versus whole plant cannabis. But I am concerned that there is a sort of pharmaceuticalized approach to the business now with a corporate cartel like we have in New Jersey, high prices, low access, all that kind of stuff. So, I think so far the comments, largely, I do appreciate you reading the opposition comments and the Monty Python voices. But, I called for descheduling. I think a lot of the comments call for descheduling. And I think that the public has a good handle on interacting with the DEA on this policy and ultimately saying that we want descheduling. So I'm impressed with how many people made comment. Everyone, you still have 14 minutes. I think Lefty put the link up in the chat. I hope you can go to, regulations.gov and find the DEA comments section up there. But amongst the 30,000 comments, I am duly impressed with how many of those comments really turned out to be people calling for descheduling. I think that the DEA is going to get an earful on this one. It'd be tough for them to really ignore it. How could they ignore this volume of comments calling for descheduling? They do have the authority, like I said in my own comment, to themselves deschedule cannabis. It's the most outside possibility, but the DEA could announce tomorrow that they've decided that marijuana doesn't belong in the CSA and they're deschedule it. So, then it would be up to the White House to say no, which I don't think that they would. So that'd be interesting.
See, that should be a good link right there.
Yeah, I'm 14 minutes. It'll take you just 2 minutes to make a comment if you haven't made a comment yet. And if people want to find more information about what all this means, you can go to decriminalizedmarijuana.com, normal.org, that's NORML.org, or SSDP, that's SSDP.org. And that'll take you to the three main organizations that are pushing for drug policy reform and cannabis descheduling. Have you checked out any of those sites?
I'm going to put the correct link up right now, just in case. Hold on.
Instead of the incorrect link? That's a good idea.
I had the correct one up. I put it wrong again.
It's good to have the correct instead of the incorrect link, for sure. I do have to say I'm quite excited at the prospect of President Harris. I think it's going to be a different day. But the difference between the two is really generational and huge. He really does represent the past, and she really is the present and the future. So I think that Kamala Harris is going to wake up a base of people who are sick of hearing white guys argue, and they're going to rather hear her talk about policy and politics, and I think it'll be a good day.
So what has been happening? Why is your phone blowing up so much since Biden made this announcement?
Well, people want to know, get some insight into what Harris might do on cannabis policy, which is different. And her position is profoundly different. I mean, let's be clear. President Biden's sort of stopping point on his cannabis reform position is decriminalize marijuana. Kamala Harris's starting point is legalize marijuana and go from there. What I heard at the White House during my meeting at the Roosevelt Room really was profound. I was kind of floored. They rolled out what was a future where they dealt with cannabis policy first and the rest of the annoying and completely tragically destructive drug war next. They weren't going to stop with cannabis policy. And I think that the Vice President Harris, if she were in charge and if her team were in charge, because it's not just her, it's her staff, it's everyone around her. It's the White House. It's the Harris administration. Instead of the Biden-Harris administration, it's the Harris administration now. If that really becomes a true thing, there will be a more positive shift for cannabis policy. Again, the president can recommend cannabis descheduling, and she already sponsored a bill in Congress for it. So if any president explicitly recommends cannabis descheduling, we're in a different process than the one that we're commenting on today. And we're really getting to where we need to be. So would President Harris recommend descheduling where President Biden did not? I think that there's a much stronger possibility that the president would recommend descheduling if the president was Harris.
Who do you think she's going to pick as a running mate?
That's a good question. Not Josh Shapiro, the current governor of Pennsylvania. He's the former attorney general, and there was like 100,000 marijuana possession prosecutions while he was the AG. As governor, he's done nothing on cannabis clemency, especially in the last 2 years as the president has called for it. Shapiro is an interesting guy in that I don't think he wins much outside of Pennsylvania. I mean, he could maybe run for Congress or something next, but I don't see him as a vice presidential pick. Some people I do think might be on a short list. At the Roosevelt Room, I also met Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, who's done other work with Vice President Harris. They are seen as a good team together. I did not really know him in politics, but having met him, I can see why people think that he is a real force. He is good. He comes from a family of politicians. He kind of knows the business, but he's also pretty sincere. And I think that he's youngish too. I think he's done grand things when it comes to cannabis clemency in Kentucky. Really, he's really tried his best as governor there. So he'd be an interesting one. So Andy Beshear, short list. Governor Jared Polis from Colorado is an also short lister. First openly gay member of Congress when he was a congressman. Really amazing legislator, a good head on his shoulders for what's happening on the Hill. But he's also spent pretty much the last 8 years as the governor of Colorado. and a really good one at that. People across the board really think he's done a great job. So Jared Polis, I think, would be an amazing vice presidential pick. So Harris and Polis, I think that they really carry a lot, and they really are kind of like the future ticket. The other way to go is the all-woman ticket. What about Senator Elizabeth Warren? Harris and Warren would make the kind of really interesting all-woman team there. Warren being the counter to Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio. She would be kind of awesome to watch her debate J.D. Vance in the vice presidential debate. And let's not forget, I seriously cannot wait to see the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. That's the one everybody's going to be watching. And I just cannot wait to see that debate. I think that Harris is ready for something like that. I really have. I've met a lot of politicians. She really is a unique and capable person for this moment in history, and she's being given a monumental task here. But if anyone were capable, it certainly is her. So I think that it's the right person, right place, right time. And I think a lot of people are excited about the prospect of her running that were completely bored of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. I think they're going to get excited about her run. So a few minutes left here, folks. You've got 6 minutes left to make your public comment to the DEA on rescheduling. But yeah, this whole thing, we could be right back doing this like next year. Let's say the president decides to make a recommendation of descheduling instead of rescheduling. We could have to do all this again. That's kind of interesting. So I think this might be what we're doing today, this public comment period, as important as it is and as historic as it is, the first sort of White House initiated rescheduling request. I see this as a really good trial run at what could be a final run at descheduling cannabis in the short term here.
What about Harris Obama?
Oh, Michelle Obama. That's an interesting one. I'd vote for that ticket right like tomorrow. But I also think that that's an interesting proposition. That's an interesting notion. I'm sure it's going to be talked about. That's for sure. I wouldn't count that one out. Not in the least. But I also think
that kind of year. It's been that kind of political theater this year. So I wouldn't. Yeah, I would expect something like that.
I mean, capable as Vice President Harris is, J.D. Vance is a sitting U.S. senator from Ohio. I think it would be interesting to have two senators across the ticket in the vice presidential seat. So that would be really interesting. And again, Jared Polis from Colorado, his experience in Congress and his role as a governor, I think that makes him really on the short list of things. I don't know why he's not being mentioned more, but other people mention folks like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. I don't think so. Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania, already said, not so much. They've mentioned Governor Murphy as the vice presidential pick. I don't think so that's happening either. So,
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
That's rough. They have talked about Murphy as a potential VP pick for Harris. He was a former ambassador of Germany under the Obama administration. He's certainly been around the White House before. It's not out of bounds to think that at the end of his term as governor here, he wasn't looking towards some sort of presidential appointment. I'm not sure that vice president is the right thing for him. He's not really that kind of campaigner. So you've got somebody. This is a critical campaign, and this vice presidential pick has got to be more than support. They have got to be a partner in winning this election, and it's going to take somebody who really knows how to win election after election. So and that's why I think that picking a sitting U.S. senator or a governor or member of Congress, somebody who really knows how to win elections and really has a proven track record and a ground game in place. We don't have much time here until November. So I do think that this VP pick is going to be important. nonetheless, the other thing I know about Vice President Harris, and we've got only a couple minutes left, 3 minutes left here to make your public comment. So make sure to put that link up on the screen again, Lefty. This is just regulations.gov. Go to the document, and there's up on the left-hand corner, there's a comment button. It'll take you just a couple of minutes. You still have time. It's 11:57. There's 2 minutes left. So, but the thing that I've seen around the White House is Kamala Harris's team. She has a really impressive team in the vice president's area of the White House, and it seemed like there was a lot of crossover with the Biden team as far as advisors on domestic policy. So that was cool to see. And if you ever want to see the White House run by women from the top down, that's the other cool thing about Harris's team. So I think that the atmosphere around the White House was really good when I've been there. I've been to the White House 3 times this year, and I really appreciate the perspective that I've gained in that, because it's not just about who's president. It's about the entire team of people in that building. And it really takes a lot of people to run the show every day of this country from that end of Capitol Hill. So it's really, really, really important that people understand that it matters, that management and teamwork, it is a top-down thing a little bit. So having Kamala Harris in charge of the country, having President Harris, there would be a noticeable difference and policy would change. And on our issue, when it comes to cannabis, I am 100% confident that it would be better for us than even the current Biden administration has been. And the Biden administration did do a heck of a lot.
We got 1 minute. 1 minute, 60 seconds.
Now we're counting down. Oh, geez. I promised myself I'd
get your comments and you get 50 seconds.
Lunchtime. I can roll myself a non-medicinal joint here and celebrate. Yeah, look, this is great. Actually, this is the close of the DEA's public comment period. First one really in a long time. First one ever initiated by the White House. And now the public has had a chance to say something. 37, almost 38, probably by the end of the day, probably 40,000 comments will have rolled in. There's like 1,200 up listed today. So thank you for making your comment. If you did, thank you for supporting the organizations who encouraged all this. But this is the close of the public comment period. My clock says 11:59. How about you?
15 seconds.
Oh, there it is. There it is,
10,
folks.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And this is it. DEA Day is over. Well, there it all is. And I will, like awesome. You, I'll be reading a lot of the comments that came in today. So it'll be interesting to see the ones that came in today.
Yeah, it was good. Good idea to do this today. Hopefully we got some people to take action. I know I did, and I had fun doing it too.
I enjoyed this time. I'm sorry I couldn't make it up to Bayonne, but I have to take my aunt in for some appointments today, and I got to do the drive around thing. So, but right. Next time, people don't understand. They see New Jersey as like really small on the map, and we're like what? We're probably 50 miles apart, right? But it would take me like 2 hours and change to make that 50 miles between my house and the studio. And then two and change back. And probably like, I don't know, $130 in tolls.
Yeah.
And gas. So, but yeah. I really appreciated you doing this today, and I did appreciate your Monty Python theater of the Sam comments. I think that you should really do like a reel like that on Instagram where you like read some of those just like in those voices, to pick out the best ones though. And then you should tag Sam in all those comments, be like, here's what people are saying in your name, and make sure that people know that they are the face of prohibition, because they are. They're I consider them the opposition, but they really are the face of modern marijuana prohibition anymore. It ain't popular, but they're the ones who try and keep it up.
Such ignorance.
It's not. It's calculated discrimination. I mean, I think that's as nice as I could be about it, but that's as nice as I could be about it. But there we go. Listen, I gotta get running, and I appreciate this time, and I hope you have some more fun, and I hope to be in Bayonne and be at the studio with you one of these days.
Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you for your time.
You too.
Have a great day. Have a great day.
All right.
Bring in the boss one, I'm gonna get mine. Go through the crime if you can't do the time. Don't tell me how you're off and down. When you're smiling in my face, but you play me like a clown and you fool bitch. So just step back. I'm mad that when I come down straight, I thought you were my piece, but you play me out. Now I'm mad as hell, and I'm full of doubt. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty, let's roll. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty, let's roll.
Brother, what's that? What's that?
Back on the scene, it's time to get mean. I'm a lean revolution machine. For what people stay, they sway. For today is good as any day. Y'all feel slightly this, let's resist. Raise your fist and pump like this. Promises over the top. Don't cross the line, but you know it's mine. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty, let's roll. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty, let's roll.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty, let's roll. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty, let's roll.